So there you have it. So basically, someone's asking this time, or at least for this video, wait, is it this way? It's this way. How does my right hand work? So I do a lot of this fancy right-handed tapping. And I want to point out that one of the things here is that on a guitar, you've got a mirror image, right? So your hands are basically mimicking each other. And there's a video where Stanley Jordan talks about this and stuff too. So it's not anything new, but it's kind of different than on the piano. You actually have to learn two different sets of fingerings, right, in order to do this, to make it, so it's just really a question of like forcing yourself to play right-handed. And I have like a long convoluted story, but like all of that, like your legato and it just takes time, right? And obviously, running through all the scales, it's like you have double duty to deal with. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. But I have like a long, convoluted story I'm going to try to make brief so I can kind of play some examples or something. So I started approaching this from the perspective of how would you do this if you were a classical pianist? So I went to the library and I looked up all these books. And turns out I found this book by August Golderick called Conversations with Franz Liszt, or the Master Classes of Franz Liszt. And Liszt goes into all of these exercises and these methodologies that he used. So he had a piano set up in his house with really high action. It was hard to play. And that was the piano that he practiced on. So that when he got to go to the concert and play, it was just like, oh, this is easy, So that kind of resistance training, like what athletes use and stuff, that's something to consider. But not as much here, because trying to do that will maybe damage your ligaments or something. But I actually went through a period where I was trying to, because I'm right-handed, I tried to train myself to use my left hand more. My theory was to do with the right-left brain balance. So there you go. After you've been doing that for a while, it's kind of a lot easier to hit the changes, if that makes any sense, because if you're playing like normal leads against a bunch of chord progressions, it's kind of like you're on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and there's no there's no like land in sight. And I mean, after a while, you can kind of get used to how you would navigate the changes based on your navigational data or something, but it's difficult to do this two-handed stuff, but it's also forgiving in a sense that you're of instant gratification. So, like, if you are not hitting the changes, if you're not able to hit the chord changes, you pretty much find out it's pretty quick, like it's not working. So it kind of forces you to be a better improvisational thinker, if that makes any sense. Like, even stuff that's simple. Anyway, a little bit of scrapple from the Apple changes. But, yeah, that's pretty much the extent of it. And since that period of time, I kind of branched out and started using, I don't have two guitars with me right now, but I started branching out to use two guitars. I built like a double neck, I pieced together a double neck. I don't know, I'd kind of rather just play this because it's such a fine instrument. Right, but using two guitars is another example. That way I could split, and I don't have another one on me right now, but being able to split, like have all my clean or other types of sounds here and have like a lead on the other one, Like, again, like after doing that for so many years, you kind of get these ways of phrasing and things like that and playing over the changes that maybe like other people just wouldn't get unless they were a piano player, but there's a give and a take, of course. And also, I guess it's important to say I was already pretty competent with just left-handed playing before I even started the right hand, like in just all of that. So you kind of have to transfer all of that over here to this hand in a sense, but your brain already knows it. So it's like the conditioning your muscle memory so that you can figure it out, And but there's just some really interesting things that happen. Those like there's kind of a disconnect because at some point the language you develop with your left hand sort of separates maybe from your right, and so like you develop almost a slightly different vocabulary with your right hand than you do with your left. And again, playing like certain pieces, just a lot of times people start off just playing like like simple melodies with the right hand, which makes sense. You're doing. And I just, pulled that out of thin air, like, because you're in an example like that with the Alberti bass, you're relying on your left hand to do most of the action. So there, and again, you see like the Japanese guitarist Nikito, that's another thing where like it's a lot of stuff's happening. It's polyphonic, but it's more reliant on the left hand doing a lot of the the action, as you would say, and that's totally fine. I actually like that aesthetic too. Because you can make like weird chords, right? That you couldn't really, you can't really hammer this that easily, right? But you can do this. You use your, left hand as like a capo, and just kind of like harp the strings, a little bit like this. And it's kind of like the equivalent of people that would use like a loop pedal or one of those freeze pedals or something like that. You come up with a lot of stuff like that. There's like a wealth of different ways of approaching the guitar. And a lot of times the hard part is trying to drown out all of the possibilities, like imposing limitations on yourself intentionally. Because I used to play 7-string, and I went back to using a 6 because I would go over to people's houses or go to a guitar store. And, inevitably it was like they only had a 6-string guitar. So it's like you get used to playing one and your whole repertoire is kind of like, kind of messed up. And so that's one reason. The other thing is that I happened to go into a guitar store and pick up a Telecaster, and I was just like, I was amazed at how well the guitar works for the way I play, because I never really picked one up before. In all those years, I'd never even tried one. And so eventually, after seeing this, I was just like, oh, well, this is like the space age version of, this is a mute, in case you were wondering. I just got it like a hair tie from Walmart. That's all it says. But yeah, this is like the space age version of a classic Tele, kind of the best of both worlds. Another plug for Strandberg. Wait, there. And but it's one of those things, like the limitation of working within a certain framework. Because at the time, I was using a 21 fret guitar, so maybe because of the way scales end, because you don't have enough frets and other considerations, it kind of forces your brain to go here, kind of squeeze the math down in a certain lower ratio. But then maybe you're working with the lower positions and other chords that you wouldn't have previously played. That's just one example. And I'm not saying everyone needs to limit the way they do their stuff. It's just, there's like a psychological component, unless you're like a real genius trying to keep all of these ideas in your head and also simultaneously be technically still playing at a high level. It's very difficult. Like one of my old composition teachers used to say, at some point you have to choose as to whether or not you want to be a player, like a virtuoso player, or a composer, because you can't always do both. And there's a lot of truth to that, because both require a lot of time, and since we're all not really making money from doing this, probably, right, you have to kind of pick and choose your battles as to what you're going to do. So yeah, so I think I'll just leave it at that and maybe play you out with a little clip.